rocks in the hot sun. I fought the law and the law won. I fought the law and the law won.
Hello, I'm Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney Dan Laren, here once again with the case of the week. In law school, students learn about something called a dying declaration, which is basically a statement that's made by a victim who thinks that their death is imminent. Now, it's one thing to sit in a classroom at UK law and learn about this exception to the hearsay rule. It's quite another thing to try a homicide case in the real world and listen to the dying declaration of a woman who identifies the man who's in the process of killing her. Listen to this 911 tape.
Was Roderick? Roderick Blincoe.
What's his name?
Roderick Blincoe? Yes.
On September the 11th of 2009, a woman named Lisa Carr was murdered by a man named Roderick Blincoe. This case was prosecuted by Cindy Reeker and Andrea Mattingly Williams from our office, who have discussed the case in detail in community television and radio programs. The basic facts are that Blincoe was paroled in January of 2009. He rented a room from Miss Carr and was in the community until September the 12th of 2009, when at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Lexington police were dispatched to the 911 call that you just heard. They arrived at Miss Carr's residence on Aurora Avenue here in Lexington, where they found Miss Carr surrounded by her neighbors, bleeding from approximately 13 stab wounds. Miss Carr was transported to the UK hospital, where she died in surgery. The police investigated the scene. They found evidence of a struggle inside the home and in the backyard, where they also recovered a bloody knife, which turned out to be the murder weapon in this case. They found a blood trail that led over the privacy fence to a nearby church, where they found the defendant in this case, Roderick Blincoe, hiding. He was arrested, charged with murder, and transported to the Fayette County Detention Center. Now, the thing about this case is that when Blincoe was paroled in January of 2009, that was his 8th parole. He had been paroled 7 times since 1977, when he began to commit his various felony offenses, and on each and every one of those 7 previous occasions, he failed parole and was returned to the penitentiary as a parole violator. His criminal history is significant for violent crimes, including robbery in the 1st degree, robbery in the 2nd degree, a burglary, and a receiving stolen property. Also, he has been convicted of unlawful imprisonment. While he was on parole, he committed at least 2 violations. He had a new misdemeanor conviction for public intoxication, and he had absconded from a halfway house where he was sent instead of being revoked and sent back to the penitentiary. Now, in September of 2011, a Fayette County jury considered all of this and convicted Blincoe of the murder of Lisa Carr. They sentenced him to life in prison, which means he'll be eligible for parole one more time in 20 years. Now, we hear a lot from the legislature about the cost of incarceration. We're told that the Commonwealth can't afford to house these inmates, and so laws are passed that reduce parole eligibility or reduce criminal liability for felonies like possession of a controlled substance. In this case, Blincoe was released in January of 2009 despite his 100% failure rate for his 7 previous attempts at parole and his criminal history of violent felony offenses. The cost to incarcerate people like Roderick Blincoe really don't compare to the ultimate price that was paid by Lisa Carr in this case, when she was brutally and senselessly murdered by a convicted felon who was on parole, who had repeatedly demonstrated that he was unable to live in our community, that he was unable to be supervised in our community, and should have been in the penitentiary instead of murdering this innocent victim. I'm Dan Laren. This has been the Case of the Week.